Welcome, everybody, to Mormonish. I'm Rebecca.
And I'm Landon, and we're really excited about our guest today.
We absolutely are. We have the incredible Rod and Nan Osborne with us, who were so kind to come on the program this morning. Good morning, Rod and Nan. How are you?
Hi, Rebecca. Hi, Landon.
We're great. Thanks.
We're doing well.
Happy to be here.
Oh, and this is a Saturday morning early. So, boy, everybody's a trooper for getting
All good.
Thank you.
Rod and Nan are just an amazing couple that kind of came on the radar when a documentary called Mormon No More dropped on Hulu in the spring. And we will put some links to this in the show notes in case you guys have not had a chance to see this. And this documentary kind of followed the story of several people, their different stories, as they gravitated away from Mormonism. And one of the very intriguing stories in this documentary was the story of two Mormon women who left their marriages, found each other, and were married and living their life. And it talked about the ripple effect from that. It talked about their families and how their family members that were in the church were adjusting, and just kind of that dynamic. And so the reason I say breakout star is because Rod and Nan were the parents of Sal. And I think all of us, wouldn't you agree, Landon, who watched this sort of said, now they're very interesting. And maybe it's because we related, to being a parent, maybe of similar ages. But I think a lot of people said, oh, those are the parents that every post-Mormon wants. So we were so happy to have them joining us here today to talk about their story and their journey and what they're doing now. So welcome again. We're just thrilled to have you guys.
Thanks, Rebecca.
We're glad to be here. Thanks for asking us here.
Yep.
Yeah, and you guys are heroes of mine, because as we watched the show, you were the ones who I really related to, because having left the church and then having children of our own, who were some in, some out, it was fun to watch you guys and say, wow, there's a perfect example of parents and how you can deal with this. And so that's why we were just going, yay, go Nan, go Nan.
I don't know about perfect example. You could ask our kids. It took us a while to get here.
Definitely weren't perfect.
Yeah, I don't think anyone is, but you certainly handled it well. And it was especially with the documentary, you do have it's an edited version of how you did it. So you've always got that going for you, but it certainly set an example of where you went, wow, there's parents who could accept what was happening with their children. So I just loved watching it, and we just fell in love with you guys as we watched the journey you were going through, because it's a journey many of us have also been on. So I really enjoyed it. But with this being Valentine's month, and we're looking at telling kind of stories of couples and of love, why don't we start out by you guys telling us how you met?
Go for it.
You want me to?
Uh-huh.
Okay. I was a recently returned missionary. I'd been home maybe 8 months. And I dated a few girls, and I had a good buddy I was visiting one night. I can still remember being in his little place. And I was talking about, we were talking about dating, and he said, hey, I have the girl for you. And so I will backtrack on, well, after that, he gave me your name. He told me who she was. And I said, okay, I'll go check it out. So actually, I went to an LDS Institute. He had an LDS Institute class with Nan's mom. Yeah.
That's unusual.
Yeah. And this is what Nan has told me before. There was a boy in that class that her mother really liked and thought that Nan should meet him. And so Nan came to class one day, even though she wasn't in the class. She came to class to meet the kid, and the kid didn't show up. And my buddy, who was sitting close, and Nan and her mom were talking about it, he said, hey, I got a guy you can meet if you're that desperate. And so sure enough, I went and met her, and met her at the Institute class because my buddy said, hey, she's cute. And, you know, the rest is history. So.
Oh my God,
Yeah.
that's a love story for the ages. The other guy, you snooze, you lose. I'm sorry.
Right.
There you go. Never did meet him. Yeah.
And
So a
is this
returned
is this
missionary, so you were married 2 months later?
Yeah, it was close. It was a year.
Yeah.
No, it was a year. Yeah, she was getting chased pretty hard, so it took her a while to warm up to me. So
Well, and I was only, when we met, I was only 18. When we got married, I was 19. When we had our first baby, I was 20. So yeah, we weren't slow about any of it.
Yeah, you got to get on that track and you got to go. And were you guys in California at the time? I guess we should have talked about, you weren't, you met somewhere else.
we're in Utah.
You're in Utah. This all happened in Utah. Oh,
Yeah,
for some
and
reason,
it was
I
at
was
the
thinking
Weber
that-
State Institute
Oh,
because we both went to Weber State.
Oh, okay. For
Yeah.
some reason, I was thinking the California connection. Oh my gosh. And from your point of view, Nan, how did that all happen? There's always, it's a he said, she said,
Yeah.
right?
The only part that Rod left out was before he came to Institute to meet me, he came to my house just out of the blue. I guess my mom had given his friend our address and he came to our house and I was out on a date with somebody else and my dad answered the door. So when I got home from my date at midnight, my dad said, a boy came looking for you tonight. And I said, really? You know, tell me. And he told me, I said, what did he look like? He said, he made that boy you were out with tonight look like a mud fence post. And the boy I was out with was really cute. So I said, okay, this sounds good. And my dad said,
then.
I don't know, but I think this could be the big one. And
Said that right away.
yeah,
before you even met him then.
yeah.
Obviously, a lot has changed.
For all of us. Yeah. So
Yeah.
you met the father-in-law before you actually met the bride to be.
I
Yeah.
did, and I still to this day can't believe I had the courage.
Yeah.
On the podcast to just go to her house, but you know, I was used to just knocking on doors.
I was just going to say that you could just been in that environment. And now you're like, okay, now I need the most important convert of my life. I've got to convert my, girl to be my wife. So, oh my gosh. That's
Now, where did you go on your mission, Rod?
I went to the Texas Dallas mission.
Okay.
And I, in those days, Texas Dallas mission went from Louisiana to Oklahoma to New Mexico. And we just knocked on doors all day long. Yeah. And, so knocking on another door I was anxious to knock on this door.
Finally had a real reason, right?
I did.
That's right. Oh, that is so funny. So it makes me think, Nan, that if your dad had said, oh, just another guy, maybe it never would have happened, but your dad was very instrumental. That's such a great story. And then does that mean, Rod, that at Institute you met her mom at the same time that you met her?
I did.
Yeah. Well, you got that out of the way quick. Meeting the parents, that's always a big issue.
Yeah.
You did it up front.
Yeah, I think her dad was a little more in my court than mom was, though.
Oh, did she still have her sights set on the other boy in Institute that she was?
I don't know what she had.
I think she was worried I was so young.
Oh,
Yeah.
I can understand that. Yeah.
Yep.
Totally.
That's what everyone was doing.
I'm 5 years older.
Yeah.
Oh, so there's an age.
So my mom knew he'd be in a hurry, kind of, and she worried about that.
I see what you're saying.
So Rod went from knocking on doors to knocking indoors. After you got married, you went on to an interesting career with the FBI, right?
I did 26 years as a special agent.
So how did that come about from, when you said that you went, I asked why you went on your mission because I thought maybe you had a language skill or something like that got you there. Were you just in the law enforcement at Weber State, or what led you into the FBI from there?
No, Nan and I were married. We were going to Weber State. I was going to Weber. Well, we both were. Nan is a registered nurse. She went to the nursing program there, and she got out of that program quicker than I did. So she started to work and I was still going to school. And toward the end of my schooling there at Weber State, an FBI agent came to a career day. And I just thought it sounded fun. And it was. And well, it sounded fun. I graduated in finance, and then I went straight into grad school after that. In those days, Utah State had an extension program for an MBA at Weber. So I was working full-time for the Utah State Tax Commission. And then I was going to school at the same time. And I went through the process of applying for the FBI at the time. And shortly before I graduated with my my advanced degree, I got a call from the Bureau and they said, hey, you're in. And so, yeah, so
we
I
left
was 29,
Utah.
I guess, at the time.
Wow.
When I got into the Bureau. I had worked at the Tax Commission for 3+ years. Yeah, I was 25 when we got married. She was 19. So it's actually 5.5 years. So
5.5.
So were you more into the finance side of the FBI, like investigating financial stuff, or were you straight up law enforcement type?
Yeah. No, I did plenty of white collar crime, on the finance side. But I went in those days, and I believe they still have the program. It's called the diversified program, where you can have, as long as you have a college degree, and they like you, you have what they want in an agent, then there's one of 5 programs you can go into, and mine was the diversified program. The other ones, are law, science, accounting, and language. And I didn't have any of those other ones. So that's how I got in. And no, I investigated all kinds of stuff, drugs, organized crime. And that's how I started out in organized crime back in the, this was in the 80s. This was in the days when, organized crime was still very entrenched in the United States, and it was a very sexy thing to be in the FBI. It was the lead program in the FBI in those days. And yeah, I went from there, and then I did public corruption. That was in when we lived in Houston. We moved around quite a bit in my bureau career, and then finally I did a lot of counterintelligence work. At the last third of my career, I did counterintelligence work, and that's a whole other story. The Bureau sent me to a language school, and I learned to speak Mandarin Chinese, and so there's a whole nother story there.
That is a whole other story. Oh my God.
Yeah,
And he was on the SWAT team for several years, actually bashing in doors.
So knocking doors, bashing in doors.
Bashing
Now I
doors.
see the connection now.
Yeah.
Okay. Oh my God.
Yeah.
and the bashing indoors part is I was actually a breacher. In other words, you have a tool that you
The battering ram.
break the door with. So
Yeah.
that wasn't figurative. That was literal.
That was literal.
Well, it sounds like we have a whole nother episode.
I was just gonna say, we may
Rod
make
and
a
the
note.
FBI. That
Make a
there's
note.
going
We're
to be a
gonna-
lot of stories there.
Yeah, you could do a lot. It was great.
So
Wow,
I
and
was
so-
in the military, and I know that moving around, I kind of asked that question because I know from the movie that you guys moved around a lot, and the church definitely has a big impact in your life when you do move around a lot. You want to talk a little bit about how the church, played into your life, especially with the moving and the different things that you did?
Go ahead.
Sure. We've lived in 10 different states and 3 times overseas. So that's a lot of moving. A couple of places we stayed 5 years, usually less than that by a ways. And we have 5 kids. So they were raised all over the place. Our 2 youngest were raised in Beijing, China. And that's where they would consider home. That's where, they went to elementary school and up into middle school. And you're right, Landon, having the church made it so much easier. because you walk in the door with all your kids, and all of us felt at home on day one. We, you know, the songs sound the same, the building looks similar, everybody greets you, you go into the same primary class, you start the lesson right after the last lesson you had in the last place. So it really did benefit us so much, especially our kids. Yeah, and they got really good at making friends quick. And when we moved to Coeur d'Alene, Idaho, we walked in and it was fast day. And our 14-year-old son just walked straight up there, and he was the first one up there and said, "We're the Osbornes, we're here. We like to make friends. Here's what we like to do. We're glad to be here." You know, so the church really did make a difference. It would have been much harder to do it without the church.
Yeah, that's one of the you know, in my opinion, one of the great advantages you have as a Latter-day Saint is the instant community wherever you go.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that's another thing that, you know, we'll talk about later, I guess.
So was there a place where you eventually kind of just settled, or it really was everywhere?
Yeah.
And the kids
No,
were
we
everywhere.
have no home base. We have
No home base.
the kids don't see one spot as, oh, this is where we all should try to move back to. Not any of that. We liked all the places we lived. There was, you know, good and not so good about everywhere. And so a couple of our kids live in Southern California, and everybody's decided that's where we should meet when we all gather. And so that's what we do. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I know that it really entrenches you with the church when you do move like that, because it is kind of the family that you have, especially when you're not in your hometown. Everywhere you go, the church kind of becomes your family. So that certainly entrenches you. So tell us a little bit about the journey out then after that. You know, you've been living this life where you're constantly involved in the church. It's a very big part of your life. And then something in your life happened that started to make you question all of that.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Okay, look, Landon, I'd like to mention one other thing. You mentioned you were in the military. What branch were you in?
I was in the Army.
Oh, okay. My dad, I grew up with an Air Force dad. So my dad was a career Air Force guy. And we, you know, I've moved around forever, and we weren't Mormons. I failed to mention that I joined the church my senior year in high school. And I ended up going on a mission at age 21, and then got back, you know, at age 23 and a half or so.
That's why you were older then.
That's why I was older. Yeah.
Okay.
But anyway, the journey out, where do we start? I guess I can start, because I think I probably started the journey out. Well, I know I started my journey out before Nan started her journey out. We have a son who's a return missionary. All of our boys, we have 4 boys, they all went on missions. And they all learned a language. And which is, you know, an advantage, one of the great advantages of being a missionary, if you can go learn a language. Anyway, our number 2 son, one day in about 2016 or so, called and said, "Hey, I just want to let you guys know." He did it in a very loving way, that he was transitioning out of the church. And he just basically said, I just don't believe anymore. I've got reasons to not believe. And you know, he gave a few reasons. And both of us were very upset about that. It was 2016.
I'm glad there was no documentary going on then.
Whole different story.
It would have been a different story. Yeah.
We were very Orthodox. You know, I was a convert, so I believed everything. You know, I went on a mission pretty soon after, and you know, when the president of the church said something, I believed that that's what we were supposed to do. And I think I was actually, I know I was more Orthodox than Nan, and her dad was in the stake presidency, and these guys, you know, they were faithful, really good Mormons, and I think I made her, one of the things I think I made her mother nervous was that I was such a scrupulous Mormon at the time, when I got home and when I married her. But, we had family home evening, we had prayer twice a day, we had scripture study, and, I have 4 Eagle Scouts, and, Sally was just as faithful as you can get as a member of the church. So anyway, Alex was married at this time, and he'd had a little 1 or 2 little ones, and his wife was still in. She also comes from a very faithful family, and at the time we were saying, Alex is, he's ruining an eternal family here. What are we going to do about it? And so for me, it set me on a journey of, okay, I am going to study what I can study so that I can prove him wrong, and I can learn stuff and get him back on track. And so I started reading. I started listening to Bill Reel at the time, who had a faithful podcast.
Right.
In 2016, he was still faithful. He was soon on his way out, but Bill had faithful people on there. And then Laura Harris Hales, I don't know if you know who Laura is, but Brian Hales' wife, she had a podcast, and she interviewed Mormon scholars, BYU scholars for the most part, but they tackled the controversial topics, in a faithful as they could be on those topics. Laura's passed away since, but she was wonderful. She was a really good interviewer. So I loved both of those. And then Nan bought me, as a gift, she bought me the 3-volume set of Leonard Arrington's diaries.
Yes.
Leonard Arrington, of course, was the church historian, the first professional church historian, beginning in 1972 until,
I think, the only professional historian.
Yes, he's the only one so far.
Lawyer since then, yeah.
And
Right.
I did not know what I was buying him.
Oh,
I thought it was great church history and, more studying to help our son come back to the iron rod. So little did I know.
and you probably got it at Deseret Book, right?
Yeah.
There it was.
Yeah.
So of course it's safe.
Yeah, and those I just consumed those volumes. They were so interesting to me, and they're really, there's a lot of reading there. But those 3 volumes had a really big impact on me, because Leonard Arrington was a real man of integrity. He was. I think they called it the golden era of LDS church history, is when he opened up the archives to more people. He was a mentor. I don't know if he was a mentor, but he was a really big influence on people like D. Michael Quinn. And who's the guy that wrote No Man Knows My History? Not No Man Knows My History. Wrote Rough Stone Rolling.
Oh,
Yeah.
Richard Bushman.
Richard Bushman. Yeah. That name slipped my mind. And a whole generation of really great scholars of the Mormon era and Mormon history. And in those volumes, I learned that, the Quorum of the 12 is a group of guys who make decisions like pretty much any other group of guys, pretty much like a board of directors. You have guys that have been there, that are the senior guys that have the influence, and the new guys are yes men. They just raise their hand and they agree with, whoever's above them. This is not me talking. This is Leonard Arrington. He talked about that. He talked about how the 1978 revelation came about, where it was totally about blacks in the priesthood, and he was never consulted on any of the history, and so those guys, but he knew that they had Neil Maxwell down there looking for stuff for President Kimball at the time, but they never included him, who could have gone and told him a whole bunch. she's doing this to me. Evidently, I'm not going.
No, we actually, I mean,
um,
this will air later, but the episode of Mormonish we dropped yesterday was actually called The Political Infighting and Politics Behind the Lifting of the Priesthood Ban, because you're absolutely right. And if you read Arrington, you know all about that. It literally was politics.
But he, you know, he explained that he was pretty much left out of that. They did it on their own, but also what was interesting to me was that, you know, he talked about Bruce McConkie being pretty much, he was the only one that talked about how that there were unusual things happening when this revelation occurred. And he said it was like the rushing of the mighty winds, and it was just like Kirtland. But he would tell that to his family and other people. He never said it over the pulpit. But he's the only one who would say anything like that. And I don't know, you know, if you're familiar with President Hinckley's take on that. President Hinckley said, no, we just all had a good feeling about it. So there was embellishment on the part, you know, in his opinion, there was embellishment on the part of Elder McConkie regarding that whole thing. But those volumes gave me real insight into how the church actually works. And from there, I started reading D. Michael Quinn, and I read Russell and Rolling. I read a ton of stuff. Yeah, ton of stuff about the Mountain Meadows Massacre, and then on and on. And, you know, it's led me to where I am today.
Okay, let me fill in.
Yes, for sure.
So he read all that, and meanwhile, after Alex decided to step away from the church, Alex was good friends with Sally's husband at the time, and so they had their own journey. And it was only a couple months later, Sally called and said, "I'm sorry, but I'm leaving the church." Oh, you know, and then our oldest son, not too much longer after that. So all three of them went out fast, and it was very hard, very hard. I felt like I'd given my whole life to raising these kids and teaching them the gospel and following all the commandments of how to raise kids so they'll never fall away. And then there they went. And I felt like I just wasted my whole life, you know. Then we have two younger sons who were just getting ready to leave on missions. And it was hard for them. The older three were their idols. So I was worried about the young kids. And as they went on a mission, and then the second one went on a mission, the older kids by then were all the way out. Their spouses were out. Everything was done. So when the two younger ones got home, they were just devastated and all of that. And then once Rod finished reading every single book on.
Well, and that was a period of about 5 years.
Yeah.
Because the boys are 2.5 years apart.
Yeah.
Okay.
Once Rod finished reading everything, it was an interesting time at our house. He started reading the stuff that wasn't sold at Encircle. Then he started reading all of that and listening to John DeLynn and the rest. So during that whole 5 years, all Rod wanted to talk about was what he was reading and what he was hearing. And I did a lot of my own studying, but a lot of it, he would just tell me, "Okay, let me tell you everything I read today. Now let me tell you." And he'd finally finish, and we'd go to bed, and it would be 11:30 at night, and we'd be in bed, and he'd say, "Can I just tell you one more thing?" And then I'd say, "Sure." And then there'd be another half an hour.
That might have happened twice.
So anyway, it was a lot of studying. Yeah. And then when our youngest son, after his mission, he decided to step away. By then we started saying, okay. And then in the middle of all that, Sally realized she's gay, and she came out, and that gave us a whole separate, different kind of reason to question. And that led to a lot of questions for me, and a lot of concern and discord. And so that's where, and then it finally, and really, we only left really at the end of the show when I said at the last episode, I think I'm stepping out. That was May of
last year.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
it's
That was so
all been-
powerful in the documentary. I mean, that was absolutely
Oh.
riveting. Everyone was just going, oh my goodness. So would you consider that you were in a mixed faith marriage for a period there? Or Nan, were you just very receptive the whole time and listening? Because Landon can speak to that. He was in a mixed faith marriage for a while where there wasn't necessarily that give and take of sharing of information. I mean, there was, but it sounds like maybe you were more receptive. Do you consider yourself mixed faith or just kind of working out together?
We didn't consider ourselves mixed faith because the whole time Rod's on the High Council giving talks every month. I'm doing my calling. So he's having all of this, you know, at home, but
a double life.
yes, a little bit. And we both, I don't know that you'd say a double life because he gave talks about,
I
don't. Jesus
loves. I'm sorry to interrupt, but
no, that's fine.
I don't think, I think, you know, she gave you the brief version. I was still in until probably really, you know, a year ago. Because I was putting stuff on the shelf. You know, all of this stuff, I was still putting stuff on the shelf. I still wanted to believe. You know, my boys, especially my younger ones, it was very tender, you know, because they had just come back from their missions. And, you know, our second to last son was still very much in. He'd got married and he was very much in. And I was on the High Council. I was given a talk every month, and I took those talks really seriously. And I still wanted to believe as much as I could, but it was waning, you know, based on what I was reading and feeling. And, you know, Sally had become a big part of that. And, you know, I was saying to myself, how am I doing this if I know that my daughter, you know, if I really believe that my daughter is, you know, evil effectively, and that she's an apostate and she will not be with me in the afterlife. You know, I discussed that with the state presidency, and, you know, the answer, of course, was it'll all work out. You know, that's, you know, the problem with that answer for me was, well, that's not what we teach. You know, you may say that, but that's certainly not what we teach. So Nan was not on board. Nan was still 100% in for, you know, a long time. And she was disturbed by me. We would drive down to Southern Cal to see the kids. You know, 2 of our sons and 6 of our grandkids lived down there at one time. And that's a 6-hour drive. And I'd want to talk all the time, or I'd want to listen to a podcast that was, you know, like, you know, Lindsay Hansen Park and Brian Buchanan on LDS History Podcast. And she wouldn't, and she, you know, she would let me for a little while, and then she would get tired of it and say, no, I don't want to hear it. No. So, yeah, it was, I don't know if you could call it mixed faith. It was, I was ahead of her.
Yeah, that's all.
That's
I was
great
ahead
way
of
to
her.
look at it.
Yeah. And one of the lucky things is we took off almost a year after I retired from my second career with the Department of Energy. The last 10 years after the FBI, I worked as a contractor for the Department of Energy. And then we went to China to visit one of our kids and to help take care of grandkids there. They work for the State Department there at the embassy, or the consulate in one of the little towns in China. And this was during COVID. And so we didn't have, the only church we had was online, and it kind of gave us a break from having to go to church or going to church. And then I think that is when most of Nan's thinking and deciding was taking place, because, you know, probably in the middle of all that, I just knew that, you know, I was not convinced anymore.
Now, was this before the show or after the show or during the taping of the show?
They started recording before we left for China. And I think, and then they recorded, filmed for an entire year. So Sally had GoPros in her house and in her cars, and they were just filming for an entire year. And they came up to our house. We were living outside of San Francisco, and they came to our house a few times and stayed for the weekend and filmed us all the time for a few days. And then they would call us when we left for China, they would videotape FaceTime phone calls with Sally and ask us about our faith and all that. So they had so much film of us that they could have used, showing us kind of stepping away, having more and more questions. But, you know, it makes it more fun to watch if you just say, oh yeah, I'm all in 100%. And then the next thing you know, she's out. So
that's what I saw in the show was
Yes.
you were all in, and we were going, oh, they're faithful members. They're dealing with this. It was interesting to see. And then all of a sudden, like the last episode, it's like, what? It was like a bombshell.
Yeah.
He's wearing a dress without sleeves. We know what
Yes.
that means.
Yes.
That dress. Yeah.
Wasn't
That
it?
makes
I
a
think
lot of sense.
for Nan, that's pretty true. When they first started filming, and
Yeah,
Nan was
100%.
100% in.
Yeah.
When they first started, and I
And
was,
you were too. in the
I was
beginning.
in, I was still giving talks, and I was, you know, I was sincere in the talks that I was giving.
Were
But
they nuanced slightly? I mean, I can't imagine that you wouldn't have somehow, that some of the things that you were learning would have
Yes.
filled in.
Yes.
Nan's like, yeah.
Yeah, I was, you know, I was careful in my talks to talk about love and kindness and things like that. You know, I didn't
The
talk
safe
about
topics.
Yeah.
Yeah, it wasn't real Mormon specific, what I would say, and I did that on purpose because I didn't want to be fake. So that's how I did it. Yeah, I was, at the time they started filming, my doubts were starting to overwhelm me, and my shelf was breaking. Nan was still fully in at the time.
I really think that the documentary was one of the key things that helped walk me out, because when you have a film crew, you know, you have 8 people all there filming you, and one of those big microphones that hangs over down, and sometimes the camera comes up close to you, and you're talking about your most vulnerable things of your whole life and your faith. And by saying it out loud in front of the camera, knowing it could be used to be actually put on Hulu, every time I spoke how I felt, it was it had an impact on me. You know, when you say stuff out loud in the church, we tell people, go bear your testimony up at the microphone, because that'll just really build your own testimony by sharing it out loud. And that's what I did for a whole year, is I was talking to that film crew and the producers and saying, you know, I do have some questions actually, and I am worried, and I know Sally's the greatest woman ever, and of course she's not any less than any of us, and how can this be? And all of those things, I would say them, and then I'd go to bed that night and hear my own voice, what I just said that day, and say, wow, this is scary. I really am starting to crack. And I think for that, that's one of the reasons I'm happy we did the documentary, is I think it helped me come to terms with what I really knew inside and didn't want to know.
It would be really interesting to get that, all of those feeds, and put together a documentary on, because you've got to have the most documented shelf breaking experience in the church, where people followed you for a whole year during that.
Yeah. And
that
you know,
itself would make a great documentary.
For sure. And I would like to have it just personally.
Yeah.
We didn't know how it would get edited. We didn't know if they were going to turn the whole thing into a hit piece on the church, or whether I was just going to be the grandma who cried every time they tried to talk to me, or whatever. So we were relieved with the way it came out, but I would like that. Sally and I both got so many people face messaging us saying, how did your mom go from all in to all out in that time? And so I went on Sally's podcast and explained everything. So anybody who listens to this, if they're interested, they can get on Sally.
We'll put a link to it.
And tell us the name again of her podcast, just so everybody knows what.
Peace Out Podcast.
Peace Out Podcast.
Yep, and it's a picture of Sally and Lena on the front. So yeah.
Excellent. Absolutely
Yeah,
excellent.
and I think I might add here just really quick. They talked to us about Jeffrey Holland's talk at BYU, where he used the musket fire metaphor. And then they talked to us also about the Brad Wilcox talk, where, you know, he was, you know, pretty racist. And we actually gave commentary on both of those talks, and it was, you know, we were both pretty critical of those, but that never got into the, you know, never got onto the documentary.
Yeah.
God, it
So
sounds like there's just untapped footage out there. So if anyone's listening,
yeah,
listen
they, you know, their story was great, and I think they did a great job of editing it. But I think, you know, probably with I guess that's just the nature of the business.
Yeah.
You know, you get hours and hours and hours of footage, and then you may get, you know, 2 or 3 minutes out of those hours.
Yeah.
And they were telling Sal's story,
They were
not
telling
our
her story, not
so,
ours.
yeah.
Yes, it's a great point.
Yeah, and that's true. It's almost like a spin-off where you have the main characters, Lena and Sal, but then you're like, who are those characters? Let's have a
Right.
spin-off on them because they're extraordinarily interesting and their story resonates with so many people, especially like you said, parents of a certain age, you know, with adult children that are making decisions, and
Yes.
you're impacted and you worry. And so no, that I think just absolutely impacted and touched everybody. And I'm trying to remember, there was the one scene where you decided to wear something, was it a tie pin or a tie in support, you know, of the LGBTQ community. And everybody that was like, well, what happened with that? What was the reaction at church? Everybody wanted to know, but it definitely showed an outward symbol of your inward journey, that you're like, this is it. I am now ready to say, look, I'm supporting, and I'm never going to say I'm not. So
Yeah, I think when Sally came out and told us she was gay, it was a much easier adjustment for both of us, well, for me, than when our kids left the church. And so when Sally came out, the way she did it and the way she talked to me was so loving and so concerned for my feelings and all of that. Boy, I was on board minute one, and I ordered those pride pins right away, and we started wearing them to church and wore them every week for the last year we were there. Yeah, pretty much. So that was a little easier for me than when the kids all left the church.
You know, for me, it was pretty much the opposite though. You know, Nan is Nan, but I'm more doctrinal kind of a guy. You know, when the kids were leaving, you know, I still had hope. I'm saying, okay, they're leaving, they could come back. You know, there's hope for them. But when Sally left and she said that she was gay, to me, that was a giant hit, because now she's out. You know, she was, you know, she's not going to come back. She is gay, and you're not going to change the gay. And, you know, she's not going to marry a guy. So she will be an apostate, and she will be that forever, you know? And, I mean, that's my mindset. That was my mindset with the church, you know, very doctrinal. And the fact that Sally, you know, when she came out, it was more difficult for me to handle than it was when the others left the church. Yeah, I think that's, you know, that's the difference between Nan and me. But we're on the same page now. So
Yeah.
I think you mentioned the pins, but to me, the big moment was when Nan, I think it was a wedding dress, and you had the sleeveless dress, and my wife was just going real excited about that. That seems to be the symbol for women that, yes, I've definitely moved on. I'm going with the sleeveless.
Such a symbol. And when the show came out and I watched it, And I realized that dress was nothing. It wasn't some sexy strapless dress. I mean, the whole difference was what, maybe 2 inches, you know? And I
I
just,
know those shoulders are, you know, tools of the devil.
and I just could imagine people who weren't LDS watching the show going, what is the big deal about this? That dress is just tame, you know? But yet every Mormon woman going, I know exactly how that feels, you know? And I bought the dress a couple of months before the wedding. My sister was with me and talked me into it. And it sat in my closet and I kept thinking, I'll find something better, you know, with sleeves. My sister's out of the church, so she talked me into that. But the longer it stayed in my closet, every time I'd open my closet, I just thought, you know, that is where you're headed, man. You might as well face. And it kind of gave me more courage to keep going in that direction. And by the time the wedding came, it still was scary to me, because you know how it is. You've worn your garments your whole life. But anyway, it was a big step for me. And it was a good place to do it.
That's really symbolic. It's almost like that was your coming out of the closet,
Yes.
the dress coming out of the
Yes.
closet.
The dress was in the
is your-
closet.
You know.
That's good. That's good, because it was definitely.
And there was that moment, I think the viewers, anyone who was not LDS would understand when your son said, I've never seen your shoulders, Mom. I mean, I think that would tell people who weren't familiar, oh my goodness, you know, this is a lifelong of, you know, control, high demand. They can't even wear the clothes that they want to wear. So I think they understood it. So and I'm trying to remember from the documentary, Sal was worried, wasn't she, about how you would react? She didn't know, or was she, when she told you, was she, I seem to remember that she was concerned about your relationship, or was she pretty secure in thinking it's going to be okay? I'm trying to remember back. I should have
We had a period of time when she came out of the church, she was worried about our relationship.
Okay.
Because we were both so all in, and we are so alike.
Yes.
That she knew this would be a big space in our relationship. And I knew that. And when she told me she was leaving the church, we visited them down in Southern California. And on the 6-hour drive home to Northern California, I just cried the whole way. And I'm like, what are we even going to talk about? I'm just going to have to talk about the weather from now on, my whole life, with my daughter, who's my best friend. And how's that going to work? I just thought for sure we were never going to have the same relationship we had before. But
and you didn't for a long time.
For a little while. It took us a while, and we had to work through it. And the work came from both sides. I had to work through my part and how, you know, do my best to bridge that new gap in there. And she did her part. She was patient when I, you know, didn't say the right thing. And I was patient when she did something that I was like, what? You can't teach your kids that, you know? But then when we had gotten through that and had some space where things were maybe not all the way back, but really good before she told us she was gay. And then when she called, then that to me closed the gap up like that, because I knew she needed me on her side. I knew she needed me to support, encourage. And I was like, all right, what do you need, girl? I'm here for you. And still, like all mother-daughter relationships, you're always working on, you want the best for the other one. And we have a wonderful relationship now. Yeah.
Yeah, it was a pretty difficult time.
Yeah.
I think it was more difficult for Nan than it was me, because, you know, I was in the middle of lots of study and right. I was starting to doubt. And I mean, both of you have been through the same thing, that you don't really, this is me speaking, you don't really understand what it's like to be on the other side of Mormonism until you're there, right? And so, you know, we didn't understand that at the time. You know, we didn't really understand what Sally was feeling and the rest of our kids were feeling, how hurt they were, you know, the pain that they had gone through in leaving the church, discovering all the things that they had discovered about the church, and most of them listed, at least in the CES letter, you know, not in great depth, but we didn't get that because we were faithful and we refused pretty much to go there. We were, we weren't going to go read that stuff. We weren't going to let the devil convince us that, okay, there's more out there than what than what we've been told by our authorities. So we didn't get that. And you guys understand that feeling that, we were just unaware of how deeply they were hurt and how difficult it was for them to get through that experience. We were thinking about ourselves, basically. We were thinking about, okay, this is our family. You're supposed to be in the church. Now you're apostatizing. We're right. You're wrong. And we just didn't get it. But, I think that's, I don't think we're unique.
And our kids have forgiven us.
But once you guys did get out, you said it's just been like a year that you've really been out. You guys jumped out both feet and really started doing some neat things afterwards. Can you tell us a little bit about what you're doing now on the other side of Mormonism that is, as we all said, so hard? What are you doing to make life more joyful?
Well, we came home from China. Sally got married the next month. We moved to Utah the next month after that. We had planned ahead of a couple of years before to move to Utah and to try out Utah now that Rod was retired and I wasn't working as a nurse. And so we were planning to move out here, but then in between that plan and the time, we left the church. So then we're like, yikes, is Utah really the best place for us? Probably not. And
valid concern, yes.
Yeah.
And Utah County on top of it.
Exactly.
You're in the heart of Zion.
Yeah, so we were worried. But my son, Sam, said, Mom, there are more post-Mormons in Utah than anywhere else. He said, if you chose any other place, you'll make friends because I'm good at making new friends, but they won't have a clue how you're feeling inside. And you will just have each other to go through this whole time of coming out and deconstructing, and however long that takes, you'll be on your own. And he said, just try Utah. So we came out and we were only here a couple of weeks. And I got up all my courage and went to a post-Mormon meetup and brought Rod along, and bam, everyone was so nice. They told us about a Thrive meeting. We went to that the next week. The people there were so great. That has been a lifeline for us. Thrive has. We became friends with all the people who came to the Provo Thrive group. There's a women's group called WACA that is for women of Thrive, and I became part of that. And I knew when I came to Utah, I was going to have to really be brave at putting myself out there, that it wasn't going to be like the church where you just walk in and you have all these friends. And I was going to have to come out of the things that are usually uncomfortable for me and say, okay, I'm open to all new friends of people from all walks of life and differences. Let's go. And man, we feel so lucky. We already have so many good friends, and it feels so good to be able to have honest conversations with all of these new friends. For that whole year we were leaving, and for Rod, the year or two before that, when he was starting, all of our Mormon friends, you have to watch everything you say and be careful. And if you start to say, hey, I've been reading this, what do you think? Oh, you get shut down right away. So it felt so like just a relief to be able to talk honestly and say, how did you get through this? And how did you feel about this? What do you even do on Sunday anymore? What do you do with the money that you were paying for tithing, and now you really want to do good with that money, but what do you do? Just all those things. And it has been really just more than we could have ever imagined. We are so happy we are here.
Had you heard of Thrive before you
No.
went to Utah? Okay.
No, never a word.
You want to just say a little bit about what Thrive is for those who may not know?
Not only did you attend, but then you just jumped in with both of you and got involved, promoting and helping others feel that inclusion and community. So that, I mean, hit the ground running, I think is both of your middle names. I mean,
certainly that's hers.
Yeah. And Thrive, I believe the whole name is Thriving After Religion. And it is something John DeLynn started quite a while ago and handed over mostly to his friend Clint Martin, who is the leader of our group in Provo. And there's a local group in many cities now. There's probably 35 across the country and some in Europe, where people meet once a month to just talk. It's a support meeting. It's a support meeting for people who are leaving high demand religions, specifically Mormonism, almost everyone, not all, but most. And you sit in a circle. It's kind of like an AA meeting where each person goes around, talks about their journey, where they're from and where they are on their faith journey. And each person gets a chance to speak, and then you all talk to each other at the end, and everybody makes friends with somebody. So then after a while, you might not need Thrive forever. You might feel fine and just have your own friends then. And that's kind of the purpose of it. So we're thrilled to be part of that. And now we said, okay, we're all in. I feel like Thrive put our healing process on speed. Like, you turn up a podcast to double speed so you can get through it twice as fast. I feel like Thrive did that for my healing of leaving the church and my deconstruction, because I'm surrounded by people who are going through the exact same thing. They know just how I feel. They know just what to say to me. I'd go there. One time I just ended up crying there, and boy, the support I got, and everybody just loved me and said, it's okay. We've all been through it. It's really, I did not think I'd be in this place at, this soon after leaving. I thought it would take me 5 years to get to where I wasn't sad every Sunday morning. And I'm already there. So.
And they have a lot of activities as well. We went to the New Year's gala dance. And that was just a lot of fun.
We were sorry that we missed that one. We were down in Southern Cal with our kids for the Christmas break, but yeah, we were really, we heard that was a wonderful event.
Yeah.
There's a Thrive event coming up on March 18th. Called Thrive Unite, and that is a worldwide event where each city that has a Thrive group will meet for the day, and at one time, like at noon, we will all get on a Zoom call together, and everybody will get to say hi, hey, how are you, Chicago? 3 cheers for Omaha and all that stuff. So on March, if anybody's interested, they can contact me.
And you're looking for, you're like a committee head or something, right?
Yeah.
You're looking for volunteers, or
yes,
so this is something people could volunteer and participate in.
I would love that so much. If anyone wants to help in any way, we need help getting catering in for lunch. We need help with the microphones and the TV and all that stuff so that we can do that. There's a lot of ways that we need help, tickets and everything. So if anyone wants to help out, we'd be really happy.
Yeah,
and if you're not in Utah County, all the Thrive groups are doing the same thing and are probably, they all are looking for help and people. So
yes. And
see where you're at.
If you are interested in Thrive and you don't know if there's somebody in your town doing that, they can reach out to me, because I've created a master list of every group that there is and who the contact person is, and if they're having an event on that day to join us. So I'm your girl. Call me.
And if there isn't a Thrive group in your area, I was part of a group putting together sort of curriculum and instructions to train Thrive leaders. You can start a group.
Yes.
You can start something in your own area. So it really is, it's just taking off. Landon and I are helping with the Northern Utah County Thrive group and also that day. And it's just fun. And it's a wonderful way, like you said, Nan, just to meet people working on a project. I mean, think about it. In the church, the reason you got so close to people so fast is because you're running an organization, right? Everyone has a calling. You're instantly friends with all your primary presidents. You're this and that. It doesn't exist outside. You have to, like you said, make your own way. So Thrive and some of these other organizations are a way to, make friends and community and help others and be there for people at different places. So yes, we will put in the show notes all about Thrive, the different, websites, everything you go to, but it's a wonderful thing to participate in and to also help with, which is
Yes.
excellent. So yeah,
Rob, why don't you tell them about Encircle?
Oh, yeah.
for sure. This is the other big thing they're
Yeah.
doing, everybody. This is excellent.
Yeah, we volunteer at Encircle House in Provo. Encircle House is it's a refuge for marginalized kids, particularly LGBTQ plus kids. And they have a place for them to come and mingle. They have classes in art and writing and other things that, and the kids can come there and feel like they have a home. And it's a great place, and it's been around for years now. We wanted to contribute somehow to the, to that community. And so we volunteer for a parent meeting every week. It's called Connect on Tuesday nights at 7:00 in Provo. And we're just there for anyone. You don't have to be a parent, but anyone who's going through a crisis or just wants to come and talk about their experience with, with their loved ones who are queer.
Yeah, we fully support the Encircle House and everything they're doing. And there are other Encircle houses in Utah and more getting built in even other states. So it's a wonderful place that I believe is saving lives, giving these young people a place they come right after school, hang out there. Somebody's there making food, somebody's helping with homework, all of that. It is a great place for kids 12 up through college. So we have all ages. And at our weekly parent meeting, it's for parents and allies. And we get parents who walk in and they're like, my kid told me last week that he was a girl and wants to be called this, and we don't know how to do that. And oh my gosh. And we help calm them down and say, you're okay, and we're going to help you. And we talk it through, and we have lots of literature on how to go through these steps. And I think it helps a lot of people. All the programs there are really good. So I'd encourage anybody who's interested in contributing to that, to helping that community, to definitely reach out.
That's amazing. And I think especially here in Utah, the other message is very clear a lot of times and very loud, not only to kids, who, like you said, are at risk and in danger from hearing that, but parents who are told, you can't accept your child, or this is not right. And so parents and children need that absolutely to be able to communicate and understand that everything's good. It's okay. So how would someone volunteer if they wanted to? Would they just go to the website? Again, we'll include all this.
Yes. I believe it's Encircle Together is the website. And you can find them on Instagram and Facebook, or just the website. And
oops, I think they froze a little bit. There we go.
There's always a link for volunteering. And there are different ways to volunteer. Even if you don't live there, there are ways you can help. And
I might, I think it'd be interesting to add that in the midst of, all of this with our kids and Sally, this wonderful woman right here went through breast cancer and is a survivor. So, through that whole thing,
oh my
she
goodness,
has, she's endured that and gone through a faith crisis all at the same time. So, and she's fine now. She's great.
Yeah.
She's had how many surgeries, like 8 surgeries, but she's in good shape. And the prognosis everything's good.
Yeah.
wow. Well, we thought Nan was a superwoman from the documentary. And now that we hear more of the story and the different podcasts you go on and different programs, we're like,
yeah. So all that was going on at the same time. So that was a difficult thing for Nan.
wow. And for the whole family. Yeah. Wow. That's just
last years.
Mhm. Yeah.
So is there anything that you would say? Like I said, I think you're just like, you're the post-Mormon parent. You're you're such a good example and role model to everyone. Is there anything that you would say? You talked about the differences, kids not understanding where the parents are at, parents not understanding where the kids are at, whether one's out in, I mean, you've gone through all the different versions of this. is there any advice that you would give to parents or kids just trying to find a common ground and understanding? Because there's love, everyone loves each other, but sometimes there's just a disconnect. And I think you guys have been able to navigate it just perfectly. And you've been on all sides of it, you know, hearing your kids are leaving, then you're leaving, you have kids out, you have every combination. So is there anything that you can speak to about that that would just be helpful to either parents or children trying to come together and, you know, just focus on that love?
Yeah. Do you want me to talk for a sec?
Sure.
I definitely would have all kinds of things to say because I was on both sides. When somebody leaves the church, when your kid leaves the church or whoever in your family, they are basically telling you that what you believe is wrong, and that they are more evolved and they are enlightened or they're smarter or whatever, and that you are not. So as a parent, I felt very much like, oh, sure, everything I've taught you, now you're smart and you're throwing it all away. And I felt not attacked, but you know, it was really hard. And also when Sally came out as gay, I didn't have a clue how she was feeling. Just like I didn't have a clue how my kids were feeling when they left the church. And so I read things and I thought I was doing the right thing and I thought I was saying the right thing. But as our relationship has gone along, Sally and my kids have told me, really, Mom, when you said that, that really wasn't the thing. But we know you love us, so we let it go. And the single piece of advice I would say for the parents and the child or whatever relationship it is just say, what can I do for you? How would you like me to show my support, to show my love? Because we don't all know. I have a friend who called me in tears and said, when my daughter came out, I bought a pride pin. I've been wearing it all the time. It's been 4 months. She came to me and said, oh, sure, Mom, you just like all the attention you get from wearing a pride pin. You're not really doing that for me. When she thought she was doing it for her daughter. And I think there's a lot of things like that, that you think you're doing the right thing, and maybe that's not what your kid needs. This daughter did not want to be out and loud. She wanted to, you know, stay soft. And Sally, on the other hand, she wanted us waving pride flags from day one, and she wanted us in the parade and doing all the things. So I think the biggest piece of advice were just to say, I love you, I support you. Please tell me what you would like me to do to show you that. And then whatever they say, do. And even if you're the kid, like Sally would say to me, Mom, here's what I need from you to show me. And then I could say to Sally after a while, here's where I feel a little left out of your new life. Here's what you could do to make me feel like I'm not an outsider now. And that would make me feel more included. And I really feel like if you can be honest with each other in sharing, here's what I could use from you, a lot of mistakes wouldn't get made. And people wouldn't have to go back and say, oh, sorry for all those things I said. Yeah.
A lot of apologizing.
Yes. Yes.
Oh,
Yeah,
that's
we
advice.
definitely didn't do it right, at least the first time. I think, I mean, you know, for me personally, what I would put out there is to realize, you know, if you're an LDS parent, and your kid either wants to leave the church or tells you they're having doubts, or comes out to you as non-hetero in any way, is to realize that there is a lot of pain on that side of the fence. You know, they are going through a lot of pain. And especially for, you know, a kid that is queer, he's had a lot of pain his entire life, or she, or they, and they've had a ton of pain. And I just say, acknowledge that pain and just say, I am sorry for what you are going through, the pain that you're experiencing, and just love them. And they can think for themselves. And I think as parents, as LDS parents like we were, we want to think for them. I think we don't give our kids enough credit that, you know, they are their own individuals. They can make their own choices. We try to make the choices for them. And these are thinking kids, you know, especially this generation of kids who are, you know, they're much more in tune. They've had the internet their entire lives. They're much more in tune with what's going on in the world, where, you know, with other people. They have a lot more information in their heads than we ever did. You know, we had to go to the library, check out a book, and, you know, if we wanted or talk to somebody in order to get the information we have, all they have to do is look on their phone, and they have, you know, more information than they could ever digest. So these kids are clued in, and they are experiencing a lot of pain. And I think we made it too much about ourselves instead of making it about them. When your kid is in pain, they're the ones that are experiencing pain. Of course, if you're an LDS parent, it's going to hurt you. But their pain, in my opinion, you know, you raise this kid, you've been through a lot more experience. Their pain should be more important than your pain. And you should try to help them through that however you can. And I think Nan gave good advice there.
Well, I think we see why we wanted them as guests. Excellent words of advice and how to move on after Mormonism. We really appreciate your time, and it took us a couple times to get together, but it all worked out in the end here.
we appreciate you asking us to be on.
Yeah.
Yes.
No, your story is so inspiring, and just the way that you can understand these complex relationships between parents and children in so many different ways. In my situation, my husband and I are out. Our oldest son left while we were in, so we experienced that. And now we have two younger kids, mission and very active, you know. So our family isn't quite doing it right. We just don't ask, don't tell, and don't talk. So I mean, you know, we get along on superficial levels, but we don't ever go there to discuss those issues, you know, because a parent that's out and a child that's in, you feel like you're disappointing. So to hear this advice on, you know, love and communication, it's very inspiring. I mean, it's difficult. You have to, I think you have to, but an area that maybe, you know, it's safe to don't ask, don't tell, and don't talk. That's safer, because if you go a little below, you're going to hit those differences. But how inspiring to hear how you guys did that. You powered through, and look at this wonderful relationship that you have with your children. It's very inspiring.
I don't want to finish life and say, well, I lived a safe life.
Yeah. Yeah. No,
that's not for me.
No, we can tell. And that makes it more meaningful. And I think the word you said earlier was authentic, you know, that now you can be yourself, you can have conversations, you can have friends that are authentic. And that's
well, Rebecca, you know, you're doing what works for you.
Oh, at this point, yes. At this point,
you love your kids,
exactly.
and you know, we're all doing. I've always said, you know, when people ask me about my kids, I said, you know, I did my best, and with what I had at the time, and I am not going to take any credit for the good things that my kids do. It's theirs. At the same time, I'm not going to take any of the blame, because, you know, I did my best. They'll have to forgive me for what I did, but I just did my best. So I'm not going to live my life regretting, you know, how I raised my kids. Yeah. I really did my best. I loved them as best I could. And I never once did I ever make a decision where I didn't want the best thing for my kid. So.
And they know that. So, you know, there it is. That's all you can say. And I also think when our kids get older, they'll understand more, right? When they get to where you are, they'll go, oh, I now understand. That's why I always say to them, call me when you're 50, you know, just give me a call. We'll have a talk. So.
Yeah. In our experience, it's usually when they're, you know, almost 30.
Yeah. Yeah,
Yeah,
that
yeah.
brainstem connects. And it's like,
Uh-huh.
oh, now I understand. So, oh my goodness. Well, this has just been wonderful. Thank you for spending some time on Saturday morning. I hope you guys have some other fun stuff planned today to go do.
Yes.
And we will just say thank you again, and signing off from Mormonish today. Go live a joyful life on the other side of Mormonism. Bye, everybody.
Goodbye.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Thanks for joining us for another episode of Mormonish. We really appreciate our listeners and would love to hear from you if you have a story you'd like to share. You can email us at mormonishpodcast@gmail.com. You can also find us on Facebook, Instagram, and on our website, mormonishpodcast.org. And don't forget to look for us on YouTube and like and subscribe. Keep joyful, everybody.